today I'm here in a C5 Corvette. This is not a regular C5, as I'm sure you all knew that just had that coming. This does have the LS1 that's in the regular C5 Corvette, but it's got 243 heads from the LS6, which, as we know, was in the C5 Z06. So, as far as I know, you know, I've been trying to look at the differences in the engines, and I've seen that's it. That's like the heads are different, but I don't really know what else is because they're both 5.7 liters. So, to my math and to my knowledge, this is basically a Z06. We also have a cam on this as well. It's the V4 from Texas Speed. Now, with the new heads and the cam, what this makes to the wheels is this makes 430 horsepower to the wheels, and we have 400 pounds of torque. The Z06 for this year had around 400-ish horsepower, but that was to the crank. So this car it's a lot more powerful than the Z06 that came out that year, and you can really tell. Now, talking about the engine, I really like it. It's got a very strong linear power feel to it. Not surprising. It's not scary either in terms of power delivery, but what is kind of scary, at least when I first got in this car, is the way it screams at you. It makes this just vicious sound. I mean, from the back, I've heard most American V8s, they mostly really just sound kind of loud. That's the only way I describe it, it's just loud. But when you're in this car, it doesn't sound just like loud. It sounds like it's just screaming. It sounds almost like a hurt animal. Like, oh my God, I broke traction there. It is so vicious. It sounds like a big angry bear. Yeah. Like, oh my God. Part of this car being really loud is because it does have long tube headers from Texas Speed, and it has Corsa pace cars on it as well. But it's really loud. Like, there's no doubt about it. But there's not too much drone whenever you're driving it. Like, you can at any time you will hear the car, but it's not like super annoying. Like, you can definitely like live with it. And because this is a big V8, if it really does bother you, you can shift into your highest gear, and you can cruise at like 2,000 or whatever, and then you don't really hear it at all. But you really start to hear it like above 2,500 RPMs, and then whenever you are on it, you hear all of it. Definitely the first car that I've driven that has been cammed. Funny enough, the owner of this car is friends with the G8 owner. That's how I found this guy. It's weird because both of their cars are like neck and neck. But this car, because this car has a cam, it's kind of like the opposite of the G8. What I mean by that is the G8 was very smooth. It was very, like, you could really, like, anyone could kind of hop in that car and go, like, it wouldn't really notice how much power it had or anything unless they floored it. It's very easy to drive. This car is a different story because, well, one, it has a manual gearbox, so you gotta know how to drive manual. And two, because this car has a cam, it's like shaky. If you first gear, it doesn't like first gear, because whenever you ease off the clutch, it's very like kind of bounces you back and forth, and it doesn't like being anywhere below 1,500 RPMs even when cruising, regardless what gear you're in. You kind of have to stay above. I mean, if you're cruising, you could stay roughly at around 2,000 and be fine. But anywhere kind of below that, it kind of starts to make a weird noise, and it just doesn't like it. Cam cars don't like that. A couple of weird things about this car that I kind of don't like, or just I think that are weird, is, well, for starters, is the seat belt. It's like this, I don't know, I'm not used to that. Also, if you plan on wanting to put your phone or your iPod or anything anywhere, there's nowhere to put it. There's no side things or anything to really put any of your little belongings anywhere, but you do have this big nice space back here if you want to put something. And the other thing is this car does have like a terrible like blind spot, like you just can't see like anything. Now going to the transmission now, stock transmission pretty much. Only thing different is it has the LS7 clutch, which is really the only thing that he did differently to this car. But it feels very nice. I did have to kind of get used to the short shifter on this car, As soon as I got in it, I thought I was in first. I was actually like in third. And yeah, it was weird.
Race
Now, despite this having an LS7 clutch, it really doesn't feel that hard at all. It's not super bitey. It's not, you don't have to have like you don't have to have like a leg day to freaking shift. It's a really easy, it's an easy clutch to shift into. But other than the cam and the short throw gearbox, it's really not that hard of a car to drive. It feels pretty composed on the road when you're driving it normally. You don't feel too scared, it doesn't frighten you. But whenever you need that race car, whenever you need it to just like remind you, just shift down. Oh yes! Scream, bear, scream! That's so good! Now, I was never really accustomed, I've said this probably 4 or 5 times, I guess, in the last reviews because they've been V8 cars or whatever. I've never really been accustomed to V8s, but god damn, they're growing on me. Oh shit! Let's go!
Damn it.
Damn, we should have kept going with him. Yeah. The suspension on this in this car is the leaf sync suspension, and it's pretty, I would say it's pretty comfortable, but it does feel weird. It's a bit different. I don't have the confidence that I do normally that I would in the corners. It kind of like, once you kind of start to corner hard, it kind of like, you can kind of feel it bouncing around a little bit. For that, it kind of like discourages me to really take a corner hard. When I'm driving on the road though, it feels relatively normal. You don't really notice anything really different about it. It doesn't really like differ from, I would say, from my Volkswagen suspension when I'm just driving normally. I do think a funny thing about this though is because of the way that the suspension is. What I believe he did is he tightened the bolts on this to where he was able to lower the car on stock suspension. And I find that hilarious. So the car sits a little lower than a stock car. And I could tell that as soon as I got in the car. Whenever I got in it, I was like, I felt so much lower to the ground. I would say like, if I were to stand outside the car, like right now, I'd be hip level to myself. Like it's weird. Now, something I really like about this car as well is the wheels. We got HREs on this, and it's a really nice touch. 20-inch, pretty big for this car, but doesn't really affect the ride or whatever. I mean, it is a low profile tire. We've got Bridgestone Potenzas on it, but it still feels good. And we're still cruising around in style with HREs. I think this guy wants to run. Even like when I did that did feel, this car does feel a lot more scary, like whenever you drive it fast. Like whenever you're driving on the road, perfectly fine, driving it normal, it feels fine. But I don't know if it's a combination of the suspension or the engine, just the way it screams at me. It is a bit frightening. But as you get into the higher speeds, it does kind of get scarier. In my brother's Volkswagen, it's not that scary once you get to a higher speed, and this, it kind of is. Suspension's not really as up to date as it's just an older car, and as older cars come, it is kind of a bit scarier in older cars. Corvettes for me were always kind of like mixed. Where the C3 came, the C3 was kind of like, I don't know, to me it was like a dud, and just didn't really like it. Didn't really have too much power. Suspension wasn't up to par. The C4s were starting to show improvements in terms of performance or whatever, but it was just an ugly car. But the C5, that was the generation, that was the time whenever they started to get their act together. They came out with, the car just looked so much better, and it had a good strong engine, and although the suspension is kind of like, it's outdated for right now, at the time it was new and it was actually pretty good. And it was it's not like, it wasn't a big, like a huge achievement, like, all right, we made a great car. It was more along the lines of, all right, this is a good start, let's build off of here. And I think where we are now with the C7 competing on the Nürburgring with a bunch of other top supercars, I think this was the start of it. Well guys, that's pretty much all I got for you today. Thank you so much, Brandon, for letting me drive your car. If you want to follow this guy on Instagram, it's going to be right here. Yeah, just follow him. Really cool guy, and car's nuts. But thank you so much, Brandon, for letting me view your car. I had a blast doing this. All these V8 cars are really starting to grow on me. But hey, I'm starting to diverse myself, and I pride myself in that. But thank y'all so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.